hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Lifting the Veil podcast with your host, myself, Adrienne Lopez, the Integrative Healing Coach. Thank you for joining me for soul healing conversations, guests, and topics that support you in unveiling the true nature of your consciousness so you can embrace your destiny and not suffer your fate. If you hear something today that resonates with you, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and or subscribe, as it really supports the growth and reach of this podcast by increasing our listenership, which makes this whole endeavor possible. In the meantime, please sit back, relax, and get ready for this week's interview with my special guest, Angela Benck, known by many as the moula doula. She is a healer, a coach with the mission of healing current consciousness around money and the way we relate to it. We'll get started in just a moment. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'd like to welcome you to this week's episode of the Lifting the Veil podcast with my special guest today that I'm super excited is here, Angela Benck, and she's here to talk about all things moula. But before we get started, I just want to give you a little taste of Angela's work in the world and what she is here to share about with you today. So let me just pull up her little bio here. I just had it. Here it is. First of all, I just want to say that Angela is an awesome colleague and friend and healer. And she works with the medicine of money. And some have referred to her as the moula doula, supporting a healthy way to be with the current energy in our lives. Highlight current. She's been on the healing path her whole life, and at this time she's passionate about teaching a whole new way of relating and being with money in our world. And of course, as always, I'll be including all of her contact information in the bio, so if you want to find out more about her work, and her website will be listed so you can check that out. All right. Well, welcome, Miss Angela. So glad that you're here. Thank you for agreeing to grace my screen and my podcast. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I feel like we've been talking about this for a couple of months now, so it's like, yay, October's here, the fall season's here, eclipse season's here.
Yes.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yes, it's the month of Halloween and Samhain and the Day of the Dead on November the 2nd. So it's all in the theme of this like surrender and letting go and death and dying, and really giving recognition to what's come before and clearing the ground for what's coming next. So this is perfect. We're also entering the fourth quarter of the year. So financially, that's a big deal for people.
It is. The fourth quarter is actually a potent time for us to plant seeds that will spring in the spring season. So it's really a powerful time to plant stuff that wants more of that like internal depth to gestate longer. Rather than like in the summer planting season, and just within us, right? Within our bodies, within our lives, within our hearts, within, getting clear on, what are you planting for, like, to me, a longer term that really wants that time to be in that dark, fertile soil before it springs forth next year.
Amen. Sister, like I am all you are, I'm excited. Sorry. I love this topic. It's so interesting. It's right up my alley. That's why you're here on my podcast. And I think I don't know how many episodes, maybe 2 or 3. I did one called the soil of divine consciousness, right? As a metaphor. And this is related to wealth and wealth making and having abundance of all types, not just monetary, although in our culture it gets reduced down. So I'm excited. So today I want to start off with really diving into this. Well, you're teaching this money class coming up. When is it starting? I can't remember.
Yeah, so this Friday I have a free money class. It's Friday at noon Pacific time. It's 3 p.m. Eastern for 2 hours. It's my third. So I wouldn't say they were a series. They were all unique and individual, and they're very much guidelines. And then there's transmissions, right? Like when
Yeah.
we make room and allow for the spirit of what wants to be taught to move through us as us. So yeah, I have things that I'm going to cover, and then I always just check in, like what is the group that's really called to this free class needing the most, what's going to inspire them. And that makes me come most alive when I'm really in that space of allowing, and it gives people a taste of what a longer program with me might be like, because it's actually a prerequisite. So I
Yeah,
feel like because my work is very deep, it's not for everyone. And hence, like the depth of the soil and the dark mother and all things in that realm that I feel like are in the consciousness, but really maybe aren't taught actively as much. And we're moving into that cycle where most of this, like really rich, divine feminine energy is coming forward to be taught now more than ever, because it's rising within all of us, right? It's not a man and woman thing. It is not a they them thing. This is an all of us energy that's present in the world, in our lives, in our bodies, in our hearts now more than ever. And it's just tuning into that. And for me, the more that I kept tuning into that over these last few years, that I went through a huge death cycle, and we've talked about this a lot, money kept coming up as far as being called to teach it. And I had to work through over the years the imposter syndrome of like, who am I to teach this? I'm not a multimillionaire. And I'm like, but I'm not trying to teach people about becoming or being a multimillionaire. Although I believe that that's possible, and I believe that is in the architecture of the experience. I'm also like an entrepreneurial woman that supports myself and I supported other people with my income. So that's pretty remarkable in and of itself, and not something that I feel like is a part of the like dominant culture. It's a small percentage, and more people as we move into like the Aquarian age are going to be more entrepreneurial, because that is really how we're going to expand our level of abundance and stop limiting ourselves and stop giving our power away to employers. Not that there's anything wrong if you feel called to work with or for someone.
the thing is, I want to get back to this topic that you're sharing because I think it's so like in the consciousness of so many people. I mean, historically, we have, I don't even know what the percentages of, but people leaving their jobs, their traditional 9 to 5s, and creating these opportunities for themselves to earn a living in new ways that they never have before. We have the insane inflation of the money printing, and then we have we have and all that produces. And so there is a I would say like a high level of awareness in people's consciousness that's creating a sense of anxiety and nervousness and uncertainty. Um, that's just the feeling I get. But I want to dive into through this conversation, just two lenses in which we spoke about the other day. One is the relationship and the value system to human needs. So that's number one. And then number two, doesn't have to be in that order. We can also dive into this from a astrological perspective in regards to Taurus and Venus and the alignment of how, Uranus, being in Taurus at this time and what that means. Because I know that you are a practitioner of astrology as well as a lover of astrology as well as myself. So I always like to get that larger cosmic view and then the more like, dialed in view of the day-to-day people. So that's like Yeah, so that's like an open invitation for you to just start wherever you feel called at this moment.
Yeah, I love that. But so uh you had gone over a couple of questions. What was the first one again now?
The first one was this relationship between money and basic human needs. And I'm not talking about food and water, although, yes, I'm talking about emotional and psychological human needs.
Yeah, I would love to actually start there. I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure that was said again, because that's definitely covered in a lot of the free classes that I've taught, and it will be covered in the longer program because this is, to me, foundational work when we are tapping into any and all things manifestation, abundance, money.
Yeah.
Um, because the mother energy or the mother archetype that is coming back with this divine feminine emergence.
Which I just want to highlight is an aspect of creator, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and hence we live on a planet called Mother Earth, although they wanted to change the name
Did they?
to Gaia
Oh,
instead of
yeah, 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 yeah.
calling it Mother. Maybe so it's like gender neutral.
Well, Gaia's feminine.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So, the mother archetype is coming back to me online collectively really big right now because of the lack of emotional nurturing that has shown up to me in the human species,
yeah,
where we're really being asked to nurture ourselves at a level that our culture really hasn't created space for, allowed, supported, encouraged. So much so, like people are experiencing things like burnout, mental and emotional exhaustion. They're experiencing even like levels of like, mental breaks because people aren't tending to themselves in a way that matches the seasons,
yeah. And anxiety and depression
are at
and
all-time highs collectively.
yeah,
And so that's a marker of like, we're not living in a grounded, sustainable, supportive, nurturing way. And so
yeah,
what does that mean for us to actually nurture ourselves? So when I talk about this in relationship to abundance and money is we're in most of the manifestation culture is, and I love, and I heard this word recently, this isn't my term. I say it in a different way, but I love it. It's manufactured. Much of the manifestation industry is manufactured, and it's manufactured from we're going after something based from an unmet need. Most of our unmet needs are subconscious, right? Like 80% of the way that we live is subconscious desires that are moving from a place of an unmet need. And so the way that and I can only speak to, I guess, just my experience as far as like my parents were children and they're still children, honestly. Um,
adult children. Yeah,
they're adult children.
yeah.
We live in a world with adult children. I mean, our politics show that all of our systems have been built on people that are adulting from really like being toddlers, from unmet needs. And so
And I
we,
want to say, at a nervous system level, they got all of us, right, as a product of this culture, get stuck in these patterns that are developed between the ages of 1 and 6 or 7.
yeah,
And then if you're not aware of that, then that's running your life.
absolutely. And so it's really important for us to, and I've heard this over the years. People are like, "Well, I don't want to go back to the past," and I'm like, "Well, you're not actually
Yes.
going back anywhere because the past is alive in us all the time, mostly unconsciously, right?
Yeah.
Because time is actually spherical, and this is something my mystery school teacher brought to my attention back in my 20s.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, that's beautiful," because I used to journal about this stuff when I was a teenager. So he was again bringing this transmission forward, this remembering that was alive in me. And it was just like, oh, yeah, like I've known about a lot of this stuff. And now I get to be that next generation of like reminding people of all ages that have gone into a forgetting of like, yeah, like it's alive in us now. Our future is now, our past is now. And how do we want to rewrite that by clearing back into like that more inspired state, the 0 point, the blank slate, the coming in alignment with the infinite. so that we can be super powerful creational beings that we're made to be.
Yes. And just as you were speaking, I was like, dang, like, it's dang, our whole relationship to time is shifting, because it's like time is a resource in regards to the present moment. Like, that is abundant living, is when we can be present. And,
Mm.
and the inability to do so because of our own trauma and programming and condition, actually, it affects our relationship to everything.
Yes. Yeah. And, I also have had another amazing coach and teacher come in and term it, you have to slow down to speed up.
Yep.
And it's true. And it's super counterintuitive in the healing path or in creating and generating wealth.
On the hustle.
Yes, because we are still embedded in hustle culture. I mean, it's going to take a minute for that to unwind and unplug and unravel, even for myself, to really give myself lots of rest, lots of downtime, and lots of play is
Yeah.
so counterintuitive. And it doesn't mean I've been in those times that I'm like stacking mad cash. I absolutely was supported with big chunks of cash during that time to do that, though, because I knew that was possible.
Yeah.
And so it's like knowing that's possible. And anytime I tap into my meditation space and I'm communicating, because I believe having a relationship with the divine creator, source, God, whatever your language is, some people personally call it like Fred or Ted or Bob. I don't know.
Or big sweetie. Yeah.
Or some people are like Sky Daddy.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking about that.
It's not out here, right? It's
Yeah.
here. It's a relationship that's really built within us and develop that and deepen that.
Yeah, because it's a relationship to life, which is all that is. And, it's kind of hard to explain that any other way but the word God.
Yeah, for me, right? Good orderly direction. So when I communicate with God and I've asked, what is mine to do? And God constantly reminds me to allow. And that's really been a huge challenge for me over the years. And also, it's so affirming when I start to see that in my relationships, when I start to see that with my money and my clients and my coaching and my programs, that this is the first launch since I've really come out as a coach in the last 5 years, even though I was coaching far before I aligned.
Unofficially, many of
Right,
us were coaching our whole lives.
right, exactly.
Hmm.
That it's been filled with ease and joy. I've allowed myself to really just rest. And I don't even mean like, let me remove that word just. Like I have allowed myself deep rest.
Yes.
Unplugging from the hustle, unplugging from the have tos. And that's a big part of what I teach is that if there's a have to in your programming, then you're continuing to move into giving yourself permission to not have to do anything. And that's like, ooh, that's going to trigger massive
Freedom.
levels of scarcity and lack-based stuff so it can come up to be nurtured and be held and be seen and met, likely for the first time ever.
Totally, because it's like, just personally speaking, like my whole personality was built on what are you providing for people now and now and now. And I wasn't aware of it until I was aware of it, of course, but that's a certain orientation to being that is not rooted deeply in the soil of presence.
Mm.
Yeah.
Truly. And I had a launch for the first time, I think it was like 2 years ago, that failed so I could unravel from the producing and it being tied to my sense of self and sense of self-worth, sense of accomplishment, or like how I was going to make money. And it felt terrible. And I was so grateful that that happened. And again, I just moved into a state of allowing and grieving that. Like grief is so vital and it's going to continue to be so talked about to me in our culture because it's needed. We have to grieve lives that are unlived within our own cosmology that aren't meant
Amen.
for us, but we bought into and believed we were supposed to live that life. And that
Yeah.
needs grief. That needs a form of allowing myself to let go of a version I believed I was supposed to be. I was taught I was supposed to be. And maybe even some part of me longed for that.
Yeah. that image of like who you are in the world, and then having to give that up. And I don't know, probably like 20 years ago now, it's like I became fully present to the level of unprocessed grief in our culture, like everywhere. And
Mhm.
this adds to the um, pathology that people are experiencing. And I want to dive in deeper a little bit to what you've been speaking about in regards to money and human needs. And I don't want to say basic human needs because they are, but they haven't been allowed for many people to be acknowledged or even seen or met. And so in the place of that, we've gotten like, here, buy this really nice car, or here, whatever the carrot on the hook is out in front of us. And so,
Which is just to me that it's pacifying, right? Like like I had a dream a few days ago with a medicine sister. She carries very much the mother archetype, and she was like a baby with a pacifier in my dream. And I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? And she had a really big healing because she was honored and respected as this mother energy. And I was like, oh, how nurturing that was for her. And to come into my dream that's that full cycle of the mother and the baby, because most of us haven't experienced really deep sense of nurturing, because many of our mothers were children and they weren't children that were had their emotional needs met. So again, it's like ancestral and generational, and we're a part of some of the first generations that are clearing this
yep,
for all the future generations and even the past, because it's clearing all the way back and all the way forward of that we're giving ourselves a level of nurturing that, for me, I can speak to 100% that has never happened on both sides of my family. And
oh
I'm a
yeah,
part of clearing that right now. And then I get to bring that forward for people that are called or resonate with the way that I speak and teach, for them to do that for themselves as well, that we get to meet those unmet emotional needs and also then prosper and thrive in a way that is so abundant with our finances, with our money. And many people in the spiritual community and medicine communities really demonize money. So money holds the shadow of this lack of love, of
yep.
this lack of nurturing that is like, we've been programmed to reject it because we don't want to feel that level of abandonment, self-abandonment and rejection that we're perpetuating, but that we felt because it's a part of the human experience and the cosmology of just being on this planet at this time.
Yeah, so it all gets rejected, including the money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And clearing that, taking radical accountability
yeah,
and and moving into this place of self-acceptance for the parts of me that I have demonized, that I have shadowed, that I have rejected, that show up on the planet for us all to see right now, to me, in plain sight.
yeah.
And instead
It's
of taking ownership, many people still want to point fingers and be like, it's out there, it's them, it's the system. We're a part of creating that together. My power isn't outside of me, but I get to see when I put it there.
yeah.
And like, then I get to call it back, right? Calling all those pieces and parts of me back home so I can really be firmly seated in my sovereignty. And to me, that's the world that I'm choosing to live from.
Yes, and this is like a level of embodied presence of our own power and inner abundance that has been continually projected outside of us. And so this is like giving oneself, as you were just saying, that level of healing. And it's not just psychological or spiritual, it's also in our physical bodies that we're healing our nervous system of these imprints that we got around self-rejection, rejection of, money, because that's the root of all evil, how that's related to desire and fulfillment, and the shame and the guilt and the demonizing of, don't be selfish, especially if you're a super sensitive empath, as you are and I am. And so I want to talk a little bit, I want to hear you share a little bit about this idea of like, for just me personally, being asked as a child, like, what do you want? What do you really, really want? Nobody ever asked me that. They're like, here, kid, this is what you're getting, and just be thankful, you know.
Just be
And so,
grateful for it.
yeah. And but you're like, but, and so you just learn to stop asking
Hmm.
because you don't even believe it's possible. Because
And I
that's what you were taught.
love that you were talking about like desire, right? So like I have a lot of people that and they're only men coming to my page really trying to be like, we're not allowed to have desire. And I'm like, not one woman has ever come to me and ever said that. So I'm just like, well, I what part of the masculine isn't allowed to desire, because all energy is going to seek expression. So if we oppress and repress desire, and I know that people don't want to hear this, to me, this is where rape culture comes from, because it is that power to not feel and be desired, be in my desire, to have my desires wanted and expressed.
Yeah.
Instead, we layer shame upon shame upon shame, and then have to exert this level of power over.
Yeah.
And that feels really gnarly. Like, that doesn't feel good, I feel like, for anyone. So if we actually start to own desire, own what we want, move it into I choose, right? Because wanting is just showing still a form of separation or lack based
Yeah.
consciousness,
Preference. Mm-hmm.
but giving voice to it so that we can claim it.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, when I start to know what I want, then I can move into ownership and owning and claiming and moving into I get to, I choose to, I am that. And that's really powerful. Or I'm open and willing, right? Because some
Yeah.
people need, just more of a softness of like, well, I
What
might,
feels right. Mm-hmm.
that's too big or too fast or too soon. And I talk about incremental changes. And that's a part of this longer program of like, you're not here to do radical overnight big shifting of beliefs, although that happens and can happen all the time.
Yeah.
I believe in gentle, right? Nourishing and nourishment to give those incremental changes to bring them into your life in a really way that supports. I get to desire, I get to have my desires met. I get to want, I get to have my wants met when I'm claiming them, giving myself permission and allowing that to really take up space in my field. And I love this, right? If having is wanting, if the life that I have right now, at some level, I have wanted this. And
Yeah.
if there's people watching this, they're like, well, I'm living in a life and I didn't want a lot of this stuff. No,
Mm-hmm.
most of it's subconscious.
Yes.
When you give and start bringing all of you to the table and have those acceptance of those pieces and parts of reclaiming of self, then yeah, like that changes of like, oh, you mean I can ask for what I want
Yeah.
verbally and consciously and allow myself to like live from that place? Because most of my life, I wasn't allowed to live from my joy. My energy was too big or too much. And I'm in my like, that's been a story that I've allowed myself to subscribe to until I didn't, right? Until I
Yeah.
was like, no, my muchness is actually, I'm appreciated for my intensity, my muchness, my bigness, my power. And so that's showing up, that's affirming, because
Yeah.
I've been nurturing and in that space of acceptance for myself first before
Yeah.
it's going to show up here.
Amen, sister. So, no, I mean this is the topic of the hour on the planet that's happening right now, and it shows up through the conversation of money, but it's not really related to money. And there's like, just as you're speaking, there's like this idea that, our personality gets this idea like I want that or I have to have that, and there's attachment to it. And that attachment actually limits a whole other like spectrum of what would be possible if we were open to multiple streams of abundance, and that it didn't, have to show up like in that person or in that car or in that house, or whatever it is, that we're wanting. And so it's, for me, it's really been getting in touch with like, what is the need that thing outside of me would provide me with, like, I don't know, belonging, love, um,
Connection,
meaning,
support.
connection. support. And then it's like, how many ways can I create support in my life outside of that one need? I mean, that one objective manifestation of it, do you know? So, I mean, it's like getting abundant about abundance, becoming like, yeah.
Letting
Yes.
it expand. Yeah, really asking those questions. And that's why I feel like, coaching is really, to me, a field that has really blown up over this last decade, because coaches ask questions that we don't think to ask for ourselves. And I work with a coach, or to me it's like, to me it's the new therapy, because they're not restricted by boards, and they're not restricted by like they can't have a spiritual relationship. I want to work with someone that has a spiritual foundation within themselves, within the whole. And I feel like those are the kind of people that also want to work with me, that I have that relationship. And you're not judging my relationship, because you're developing your own relationship. And there's so many people in the spiritual community who's like, that's not spiritual. And I'm like, no, spirituality is welcoming all of it to the table. It's saying it's a relationship. I have a relationship. It's personal. My personal relationship with God is none of anyone else's business unless I'm here to share it with you.
Yeah.
And it's really just an invitation of like, to support you in developing that relationship for yourself. Because to me, there is no separation between God and money. And like I had said with you just a few days ago, God's my banker, God's my electrician. God is the part that is in all of it for me, here to support me, nourish me. And so that's where I turn when I have an unmet need within myself, within the Father, Mother, God, child dynamic that lives within me, with the mind, body, spirit, within all the sacred trinities that are alive in the geometry of life, right? To me, that is coming back to that core sense of self over and over and over again. I had years ago, this spiritual teacher just be like, well, how did you get so good at like, was it self-direction or redirecting to self? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I didn't really have an answer, because I was like, I feel like I've always been this way, of like, when I would sit by the river and the water would teach me, it would teach me about me. Like, how is this showing up in you and in your life? And how does this flow? And the power of water can carve rocks down to dust. And that's what's alive in me. And it's like, so when that teaching just was a foundation of my whole way of life, there's so many other stories that are just like that are just, these teachings are bringing us back to our connection of self and the universe as a whole.
Yes. And this connection to water, I wanted to just drop on, because, all the metaphors we have around money, like currency, flow, cash flow, they're all related to water in a way. And so, we have this particular astrological alignment of Uranus, which is the planet of currency, really. You see the water glyph, but it's not water, it's energy, right? And it's in Taurus, which is the house of the embodiment of our values and how we're expressing them in the world. And this is just unprecedented, like every moment in history, unprecedented time of awakening and a shift in how we have defined every level, I think, and it starts with how we've been taught to relate to ourselves. And that image of the river is so powerful. So the other day I was doing a reading with a client, and I saw her sitting by the river. And it was like she was afraid to go into the river. So it's like looking at all of these ways we've been taught to fear our own power and currency. And so there have had to give it away to other people who know better.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but
I love that. I feel like anytime, just even the biology of we get better within 20 minutes of being by a body of water, even if it's still water, because we are the majority of water, we're on a planet that's the majority of water, like our nurturing and nourishment very much comes from that energy, which is often, again, associated with mothering energy or the divine feminine
Yeah,
of
we're born in it, right?
yeah, held, nurtured, supported. Yeah, so it's very, very powerful coming back to that energy and reminding. And I also, in like my free class and in some of the work that I do, I teach, right? Like the trade routes were originally through rivers, and the banks of those rivers were the part of what the ports. And so we have that with this stream or this flow of money and trade and energy that comes in and through our lives. And then we built in our world, we have banks that have been built up that are a part of harnessing that stream or river and flow, right?
That's why
So
they call them banks, right?
yeah, back in the
Yeah.
day they traded shells. And so again, where do shells come from? The ocean.
Yeah.
And a lot of shells actually have the Fibonacci spiral within them,
Yeah.
which is the cosmology, again, coming within the cell, how we spiral within and spiral out. And it's more, again, like it's hidden all in plain sight. And that's part of like why I call the school the mystery school teachings, because this is a part of the mystery, and it's also available for all of us now more than ever. Many of these teachings used to be like hidden, and kept underground for their sacredness. And now it's, to me, all being revealed. And I love when you brought Uranus to the table, because in Latin, the planet names means heaven. And so this energy really also, to me, is connected with the child, and very much shakes us to the core, or the innocence. So we are returning to heaven here on earth when it's in that Taurus energy. It's really to root it. And it's going to continue to do what it does best, and it is to shake us to the core parts.
Yeah.
So those parts can finally be acknowledged, nurtured, loved, held, accepted, in a way that we can create a new planet together.
Yes. And gosh, what's been coming up as you were just sharing was this being able to see what's truly there. So it's a bit, it's like correct seeing, and this distortion of desire, like which is the basis of human life, right? It's our life energy, our desire, it's our Shakti, Kundalini, whatever you want. And it's like reclaiming that and embodying that currency in the flesh as our inheritance and our true abundance. And I just love the shell analogy of the cosmology. Like money is a reflection of that, and we've given it so much power, and so many people are feeling so helpless. And I mean, you just look at the generational relationship that I inherited personally around money, and like you have to work really hard for it, there's never enough, and all of these imprinted
Lies.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. My dad always like would badmouth rich people. And I'm like, I lived in a neighborhood with rich people, but like we were middle class. And I'm just thinking, like, back then he made bank. Like he didn't even graduate high school, and he made more money, even in today's world, made more money than most of those. We didn't experience what that was because he couldn't hold it. So it was water. So he was a Pisces, and he couldn't hold it, just moved right through him. He had no foundation or sense of self. He had so much trauma, and so any of that money, it didn't show up.
Wouldn't stick. Yeah.
It wasn't supportive or nurturing for our family. Like he drank it away or gambled away, or like just soothed his trauma, pacified the trauma, which is where many people are still living at with their lives, unfortunately. And also, fortunately, that we're coming online to being like, I don't have to live this way anymore. There's so many modalities, tools, people, even just, you and I talking about this changes the collective consciousness by us coming back home to our hearts, to our
Right.
bodies,
Yeah.
and we stop giving our power away, and we start empowering and really, really standing firm in understanding, right? Being
Yeah.
in understanding, being in that foundation of that I'm standing upon solid ground.
Yeah. And that it has me. Like it has me. Like I have a right to be here. I belong. I
You have
have
to
access.
earn being here.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of unraveling the earning that has happened, and also why people are afraid to go out on their own or be an entrepreneur. Because I would often say to people that are moving into that realm, I was like, I'm self-sourced.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean I'm alone. Self doesn't mean alone. I am a part of the whole. I am a part of all of it. But my sustainability comes from source. It doesn't come from my clients. It doesn't come from these programs. And it's like one thing to say this, right? And it's a whole nother thing to like live it and then
Yes.
really feel it in my body.
Well, yeah, like a embodied truth, like it in your bones, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So I just I want to hear a little bit about your, is it I believe it's a year-long mentorship that you're going to be starting soon. Um, but I just want to say that like this conversation is about money, but right, it's really about so much more than that, right? It's our sense of self, our value system, our power, our how we see the world and we see ourselves in it. And so I just wanted to say that because it's like when I've had the same conversation with people that don't see the connection. They're like, "What are you talking about?" Like, "What are you talking about? I just want to be abundant and earn a lot of money and have this car and this house." And it's like, dude, we don't get to be that superficial anymore. Like it's no longer an option.
I love it. And your show is just saying that, right? Like lifting of the veil. It's like we're here to like take off materialism and really look at like what has been behind it and under it that hasn't been acknowledged and accepted. Now more than ever, it doesn't make materialism wrong. It's like we need to integrate it and put it in its proper place, is what we're being invited to, so that the scales can balance. Like I have Mars in Libra in my 5th house of expression.
Yeah.
The work I'm here to do is to, some people will be like, oh, you're going to be like a modern day Robin Hood, of balancing the scales through the
Justice.
spectrum of like bringing wealth back to the people in the land that have been oppressed and repressed. And I had to unshackle myself,
Yeah.
decolonize myself first before I could ever really bring this forward. And so
And
this,
and it's collective, right? It's like we don't get to go and everyone's coming.
we're all in this together.
Yeah.
We might be like on the cresting waves,
Yeah.
right? Over these next like 20 years where people can be like, well, thank you for being a way shower, reminding
Yeah.
me of that light. And so to me, that this year-long program is to remind, dive into those parts of our longing and belonging and shadow that haven't been brought to the conscious awareness. So a big part of the work that I do really effortlessly, because it's a part of my genius, is accessing the subconscious. I can access it, I would say, faster and quicker my entire life than the majority of people. And so to me, that's a part of the gift that I offer in these programs, is that you're going to have more access to your subconscious readily, faster. Just that my presence offers that, and coming back into ownership and power. And because we project a lot of our power onto money, it's an important topic. To me, I want to teach consciousness, and teaching consciousness to a way that people can hear it through the lens of money is very powerful and very important, because one, it's used all the time, every day. If you go to the store, you're buying gas,
Your
you're
whole
paying
life.
for insurance, like most of my bills are automatically taken out. So I'm not like interacting with a lot of that energy it's more on autumn, just like when we're driving to a place we already know, it's just so automatic. You can just like rest back, just it's taken care of, it's handled. And then
Yeah.
there's times where it's like things aren't taken care of and handled, and I'm being brought to a new level of like, oh, this is something that wants my attention, awareness, acceptance, integration. I look at letting go very different. To me, letting go is really just a deepening of acceptance. And the deeper that I accept these parts, I naturally outgrow an old set of clothes that don't fit me because I no longer identify with them. And so to me, letting go is like, I'm not identifying with those pieces and parts of myself that were lack based anymore, because
Yeah.
I've moved from fear to faith, and I've moved from faith to a place of accepting abundance as my natural state of being and living from that. And really, now that I live from that place, it's like almost like an excitement or an eager expectancy of just like, yeah, I'm taken care of. This feels so loving and nurturing
Mhm.
to allow that, right? Over the years of meditation, of like being allowing. And so many people that come to me, they're like, I don't know how, I don't know how. Well, this course is to teach you the how. One, the how is to allow the unfolding, but really bringing our awareness, right? We spoke about this. We don't know what we don't know until we know it. And then when we know it, we get to unknow. So we can move deeper into the unknowing, so we can, not know again and then be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. And now I do. And now I can unknow it. So it's just like moving through that cycle. This program is going to
Right.
support people in having a healthy relationship with money, which is to me yourself and self mastery.
I love it. When is the exact start date? Did you set it already or?
Yeah, so my course starts October 13th, which is the day before we got the first eclipse on the 14th. Like, new
That's
beginnings.
right.
We're coming in with a pow, bang, wow.
Yeah, so the eclipse on the 14th is where is it? I can't remember. Aries or
No, the
no?
first one's in Libra and the second one's in Taurus, I believe.
Oh, okay. All ruled by our Venus.
Venus energy. Yeah,
Yeah,
coming back to pleasure, desire, our
values,
values, our sense of self, and then releasing any of the unconsciousness that's around that, right?
which
Around
is
those.
tons. Oh my God. I mean, we could just have a school on how to release all of the imprinting around, basic desire and like you're allowed to be here on the planet without guilt, shame, and fear. That would be, that's really what it is, right? At the core.
Yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
having that acknowledged, it's really important to also say that the human experience, the guilt, shame, and fear, there's nothing wrong with them. It's when we make them wrong, we oppress and repress them. They're welcome to the table. We stop like eliminating those things that we think are wrong. Like the spiritual community often is like, well, those are low vibe emotions. I'm like, they are when you aren't acknowledging them. I was like, then it's like slogging through mud. But as soon as you acknowledge them, it's like when the
They
ocean
move.
cleanses you, it feels amazing. You're like, oh my gosh, my depth of compassion for humanity now, because I've moved through deep levels of that, it's astounding.
Yeah.
And we have to stop just making it wrong. And it sounds so simple, and I understand it's not. It's counterintuitive for us to move through this stuff. I get it.
Because it
And that's
looks
what I'm
scary,
here for.
right? Yeah.
So if you want a meaty program, you want something to sink your teeth into, come to the Money Mystery free class this Friday. If you missed that, you can still sign up, get a free recording, because that is a prerequisite to even join the course. I
On
need
the
to make
13th.
sure
Yeah.
people are committed to knowing the level of depth that I'm here to offer and teach. I often say my energy comes with a disclaimer, read the small print.
No, I mean it's transformational and it's powerful and it is waking the promise as I'm receiving it, the promise is to be a participant in the co-awakening of consciousness on the planet to the truth of who we are. And
Mhm.
it comes in the package of money. But it's just that's underneath it all.
Because I've looked back, like for me, when I've had really amazing, like energetic, like highs in my life, it was
Yeah.
connected, for me, it was connected with money. And so it's showing me like, oh, like I naturally like am here to teach that work. Like it's really been that I was already living that state of high vibration and it was showing up through greater levels of money for me, not for me to have possession or ownership of it, but for me to like express greater levels of freedom and then share that inspiration in my life. And that's what I've been doing for most of my life. When people are like, "Oh, you're inspiring me," I was like, "Yes, that's a part of my purpose is to inspire, bring you back into spirit,
Mm-hmm.
inspire."
Yeah.
And
And
so
this
this
is just
course absolutely is geared towards that
and
inspiration.
this energy is a luxury. The most amazing luxury on the planet is to have the freedom and sense of knowing, to be in your power, in your being, in your presence, without having to explain it to anyone, without having to justify it, without having to give a good reason for it. And that is the definition of luxury, really, truly, at a soul level. So I like that. I think I think I'm going to create a course called Soul Luxury. I don't know. We'll see.
Yes. Yes, all the Venusian energy, the feeling
No,
good in our bodies,
yeah,
good with our bank accounts.
yeah, to feel good in your body. Um, but I just want to close by saying that the benefit of doing a course like this with a teacher such as yourself, um, that there's that momentum and that imprinting that you bring with you. And that's really what is the foundation of the course, is a consciousness that's holding the possibility, as you said, seeing something that's available that somebody couldn't see for themselves because they just haven't expanded their consciousness that big yet. But they're doing it. They're in the process of it, and this is the container to do so. So awesome. I just want to let everybody that listened today or on the replay, of course, that all of the information about Angela's money mystery class will be in the description, along with her website, and then her mini course. It's happening on the 6th, which is that Friday? Yeah,
Yeah, this Friday.
at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so if you want to find out more about her and the work that she does, you can check out her contacts in the description. And I just want to thank you, Angela, for being here and sharing your magic and your medicine around money. It's so powerful. And
Thank you
I know.
so much for having me. It was so fun. We can
Yes,
talk forever.
I know. And we probably will later. All right. Bye for now.